Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Saddleback webinar this week. My name is Liz Mangus, Literacy Specialist with Saddleback Educational Publishing. Thank you for joining us. As you are logging in, please locate your control bar, which is at the bottom of your web browser window. That is where you will find the chat, the Q&A, and the live transcript option. Probably the most important of those will be the chat, because we do want you to interact with us today. So here's a little tip about the chat. Please make sure that you select panelists and attendees from the drop-down menu before you hit send on your chat. That will ensure that everybody joining us today gets to see your comment. If you don't do that, only a few of us at Saddleback will see your comment, and that's not what we want. We want a lot of engagement. We want everybody sharing. So when you chat, please select panelists and attendees from the drop-down menu. We will also be putting a couple of links in the chat area today as we proceed throughout the content to help you engage and communicate with us today. So be on the lookout for that. If you have any questions, either for Saddleback or for our presenter today, Dr. Honingsfeld, you can use the Q&A area. We will do some questions at the end of the session today, so feel free to put those in the Q&A area. If you do accidentally put them in the chat, no big deal. I'll find them and we'll make sure that your questions get answered. Now, if you want to take advantage of subtitles, please click live transcript and then select show subtitles. We'll get started right at 3 o'clock Eastern time. We are on Twitter. So while you're waiting, if you would like, we definitely encourage you to go to Twitter, follow us. Saddleback and Dr. Honingsfeld are both there, so say hello. If you're on live with us, we appreciate it if you let everybody know you're on live with us. And if you're catching the recording, let us know that you saw this and that you enjoyed this great learning opportunity. So let's say hi to our presenter today, Dr. Honingsfeld. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm so excited to be here with everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I see lots of familiar names and lots of new names as well. It's always good to connect and reconnect virtually. So thank you.
I love seeing everybody in the chat, letting us know where they're joining us from. If you haven't already, please go to the chat and let us know where you're joining us from today. We have, we're an international audience again today, I see. We have Canada, Iran, and then lots of people from the United States as well. All right, Columbia, Maryland, welcome. Now we know that most of you are in the middle of the workday today, right? So we appreciate you taking the time to join us. So thank you so much for being here. All right, India is in the house. Welcome. Hello, Texas and Alabama, Little Rock, Arkansas. We love seeing all of you here today. Thank you so much. This is so exciting. I love seeing all that. Oh, hello from China too. Oh my gosh, Dr. Honingsfeld, you are popular. Oh my goodness.
And let me just shout out to the international audience here. I know that you are in the middle of the night, sometime between, I think, 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. So I did not anticipate that you're staying up this late. I encourage you to just listen to the recording, but I'm so very, very honored that you're here, as well as everybody else from around the United States and North America. Yes, okay, just after midnight.
Okay.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you for telling us. And there's a very, very special audience member here, Claribel Gonzalez. So Claribel, I'm so glad you're joining us. Claribel is the sketchnote artist who actually illustrated quite a few of my books now, and you're going to get to see her masterpiece on one of my slides. So Claribel, I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is exciting. I see a lot of familiar names too. Miss Okrasky is here from the Carolinas. Hello, Lori Edmonds, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Let me officially introduce our topic for today. So we're here to discuss equity strategies for multilingual learners. Fantastic topic, something that we're all very interested in. And we have a fantastic, great speaker for us today to talk about this. Like I can't think of anybody better than Dr. Honingsfeld to address this topic. So if you don't know her, let me introduce you. So she is a professor in the Division of Education at Molloy College in New York, and she teaches doctoral courses related to diversity, social justice, and equity. So before entering the field of teacher education, she was an English as a foreign language teacher in Hungary, and English as a second language teacher in New York City, and she taught Hungarian at New York University. She was a Fulbright Scholar where she lectured in Iceland, and she has been presenting at conferences across the US and really all over the world. So she also offers, she's an author. You're going to hear about one of her new books today, but she also offers virtual and on-site professional development opportunities, focusing on effective differentiated strategies and collaborative practices for ELD and ELL specialists in general education teachers. So thank you so very much for taking the time to be here today. Welcome. I'm going to let you take it from here.
Thank you so much, Liz. It's truly an honor to be here, and I'm very, very grateful for the many educators who are joining me either live or watching the recording. And also, of course, thank you for that wonderful introduction. So I'm going to share my slides so that we could switch over seamlessly into my presentation. And as Liz mentioned, we are going to focus on equity strategies for multilingual learners. And I just wanted to add a few more slides by way of introduction. I was born and raised in Hungary, in case you're wondering where that accent is coming from. That's where I was born, raised, educated, and became an EFL, English as a Foreign Language teacher, before I came to the United States. And if you've never been to that part of the world, here are some beautiful images that I wanted to just entice you to consider when we can travel again. And fast forward now, many years later, I found myself in the United States, and more specifically in the New York City public school system as an ESL teacher. You could see this many, many years ago and many hairstyles ago. I was one of the first ESL co-teachers in this second grade classroom. By training, I am a secondary educator, but I spent quite a few years teaching at the elementary level as well. So I kind of got the best of both worlds. But for the past 20 plus years, I've been a professor and an administrator at Molloy College. And specifically for the past 6 years, I've been directing a doctoral program focusing on social justice and equity. So this is my 5-second commercial. If anybody's interested in an online doctoral program, please email me after the session. And if you're not sure where we are in New York, because this is a very big state, Liz and I were chatting about how living in Buffalo is quite different from living in New York City or on Long Island. So Molloy College is on Long Island, where that happy face is. And as Liz also mentioned, I have published quite extensively, mostly focusing on the topic of English learners, multilingual learners, and collaboration and co-teaching in order to create an integrated collaborative service delivery model and doing away with the segregated, disjointed, or isolated type of pull-out system. But today, I'm going to be talking about equity strategies based on my most recent publication that just literally came out a few days ago, called From Equity Insights to Action. And I'd like to give a very special shout out to Liz Mangus and the entire Saddleback team for supporting this webinar. To my co-authors, Dr. Maria Dove, Dr. Audrey Cohen, Dr. Carrie McDermott Goldman, and the fabulous one and only Claribel Gonzalez, who is here on this Zoom call with us today, who illustrated this book. And to all of you equity warriors, equity champions, educators who are here with me today because you think that this is an important enough topic to dedicate the next hour to it. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. So those of you who are here live, I want to give you a 2-minute quick activity because I want to have a feeling for who is in the room. Many of you already introduced yourselves based on where you are from. So it's great to see such international as well as national representation. But please introduce yourselves with 2 P's. What is your professional position? And what is something that you're passionate about? And I'm going to be trying to read this chat as fast as I can. So I know that we're going to have a lot of educators, but what specific position you have? Often I have a lot of ESL, ENL, ELD, EAL educators, as well as other administrators, classroom teachers. All right, lots of different positions represented here. And don't forget about your passion. The passion could be something related to education or not. I'm very, very passionate about traveling. I can't wait when we can just more comfortably get back on the plane and see each other in person again. I'm also very passionate about yoga and many, many other fun extracurricular activities. So thank you. Now we are over 100 live participants. So I'm reading that chat box very, very fast. Luckily, we can save this chat box. So I promise I will go back and read through everything that you're posting in the chat box. But thank you for your participation. I see a lot of you are sharing your passion for teaching, for reading, for equity, for working with this population, empowering students and fellow teachers. It's just really, really beautiful. Thank you so much. All right, keep them coming. I'm going to go on, but if you haven't had a chance to hit that submit button, please do so. As I promised, I will be reading your chat posts later. So the goals for this short session, of course, are very ambitious. As you could see, we are going to define equity work in the post-pandemic classroom, even though we're not quite out of this crisis yet. We are going to explore briefly 4 essential strategies to support equitable learning opportunities, specifically focusing on multilingual learners. There's a large body of literature, a lot of research, and a lot of amazing practical solutions to the equity crisis that we're also facing, the inequities that permeate our society and our classrooms. But often that research or those publications do not specifically focus on our multilingual learners. So that is what I have taken upon myself with my colleagues in this particular publication and in this presentation for you. And my hope is that you're going to be able to apply many of the strategies to your own context as a result of today's session. So the 2 essential questions that I'm hoping to help you answer are as follows. What drives you to pursue equity for English learners in your daily work? And what is your why? What are some impactful hows that drives your why? So just pause and ponder on these essential questions. These are overarching guiding questions for my entire life's work, as well as this particular session. And we certainly don't have an easy 1 or 2 word answer. But if you wish to share, please go ahead. You can always share any comment, any question, any reflection in the chat box to be able to make this session more interactive. Okay. So let's start with one of my absolute favorite tools. It's called Answer Garden. So quickly in the chat box, just put in a Y for yes and N for no if you know this particular tool. It's called Answer Garden because I'm going to be planting a question and you're going to help me just populate a beautiful garden. And I see a lot of no's because as you're answering, they keep popping up for me, and some yeses. I'm very, very excited to introduce Answer Garden to you. It is an extremely powerful, fun tool, and this is what it looks like. So here is the link. I'm going to ask Liz to put the link into the chat box. Wonderful. So when you click on that, you're going to get to a screen that looks just like what I'm showing here for you. There is a simple question. And all you need to do, please listen carefully, give a 1-word answer. If you give a 1-word answer, something magical is going to happen. If you give 2 or 3-word answers, it's a little bit harder for the Answer Garden to handle your responses. But if you have more than a 1-word answer, you could keep adding your 1-word answers. So I'm going to quickly switch over there on my Google, and you're already planting the seeds of this Answer Garden. Beautiful. So as I refresh it, oh my goodness, take a look what happens, especially now that we have 117 participants. If every one of you just offer one word answer, I think we're going to end up covering that entire gray area, which is our garden. But you can give more than one word answers if you just go back to that dialog box and type in another word. Like if I'm typing in support, I'm going to add that. What happens is support gets even bigger. So that's the trick of Answer Garden. It captures the collective wisdom in the room, in this Zoom session. So every one of your answers are there. But if an answer happens to be shared by many others, then that word is going to get bigger and bigger. So let's just do 1 or 2 more quick rounds. All right, so 1 more final round, and you could certainly repeat some of the answers that are there. For example, if you think community is important, you could type that in as well, and then you're going to be then privileging that answer, and that answer is going to get bigger and bigger. So let's see. I absolutely love this. Obviously, I've been playing with this Answer Garden tool for many, many years, but I can tell you that I rarely had a more active audience, because you are already at the edge of that garden. We're almost covering the entire gray area. So keep them coming. Absolutely beautiful. And if there are any Twitter users out there, I would love a Twitter shot of this. It would be really wonderful to send it out there, what your collective wisdom is about what we need to provide for our English learners, multilingual learners. And more often than not, what I get is exactly aligned to your answers, which is most of the answers, most of the large answers anchor around social, emotional, or other kinds of support, not so much around pedagogy, but understanding, empathy, advocacy, access, relationships, compassion, connections, and of course, love and respect. We all know that our students also need high quality pedagogy and education, such as high expectations, vocabulary, scaffolds, literacy. But most of all, we need to create a system of support for these students to succeed. Wonderful. Absolutely love it. Thank you. So we are going to go back to the PowerPoint. That was Answer Garden. Now, quick yes or no in the chat box if you are as passionate about this tool as I am, and then you're going to use it again for your own purposes. It's just answergarden.ch. It's completely free, and you could just literally in 20 seconds plant a question and then send that link out. You're going to get a unique link. You can't modify it, you can't customize it, but that's the link that only this group is going to have access to. And we can use it for this fast kind of visual polling. All right, thank you. So I'm also going to poll and engage you in multiple other ways using the Zoom feature, which is the Zoom polling feature, because I'm really interested to find out, excuse me, in your own context, what is the most urgent challenge that you are hearing about, that you're seeing? Are there educators, maybe administrators, or just the community talking a lot about COVID slide or learning losses? Or are there some students, especially some of our underserved and often undeserved students, who are getting retained? Is there a focus on remediation rather than focusing on the growth and what the students have gained during the pandemic? Is there deficit thinking that dominates the conversation? And are you concerned about the students' social emotional well-being? I see a lot of you already adding to the chat box, but we actually also designed a poll for you. So it's a single choice. I'm going to ask you to just choose one for now. Which is the most urgent challenge? The urgency that you feel in your own work that concerns you, that you would like to check off. So please check that off. And we're going to run this poll for a little while. I'm going to ask Liz to monitor when we have a good number of participation so that we could start sharing the results. So those of you who happen to have entered your responses in the chat box, if you could just please transfer your answer to this poll so that we could get an idea. What are some of the most urgent challenges?
Okay, it looks like we have about 68% of our attendees have put in a response. We'll give it another 20 seconds or so.
Yes, yes, definitely. And I know that sometimes you might want to check off more than one answers. My other polls will have that option, but right now I just really wanted to be able to, with laser focus, identify a couple of large-scale urgent challenges. So let's see, those are the results there. So it seems like most of you, 34%, identify deficit thinking. And I had a feeling, you're going to see on the next slide, I think you were sending me some kind of channeling your thinking. You will just see what's on the next slide. Exactly, I'm going in that direction to addressing the concerns around deficit thinking. But all the others are valid concerns as well, such as our students' social emotional well-being. How many of our students are now have experienced trauma, maybe directly or indirectly, in their homes or in their communities? The learning loss discourse, the idea that during this year and now year and a half, we were not able to keep up with the curriculum. But there is a danger, of course, to this kind of deficit thinking. So thank you so much again for sharing your input here. And as Sherry mentions, learning loss, COVID slide, all of these also make me really sad and concerned about how we're going to be view these students in the next decade or so. And the reason is because if we're focusing on the deficits or the losses, then especially of our most vulnerable populations, such as our multilingual learners, could possibly be tracked into long-term remediation, because that's the mindset that these students have lost something. They are missing out on certain kind of learning opportunities, and now we have to make up for that. Instead, taking a look at where they are and meeting them exactly where they are, and then accelerating their learning, the remediation type of approach could be very, very dangerous. And absolutely, so much learning has happened during the pandemic. And the other concern is related to our students' self-concept and social emotional well-being if we're locking them into any kind of long-term remediation, and if the deficit thinking is going to dominate. So now let's think on a more positive side of the pandemic. And I'm going to ask on the next poll, so just wait for the poll to be released to participate. Think about some of the most critical and maybe even positive experiences that the students had during, or now, if you are already in that phase, in this post-COVID phase. So is it related to their survival experiences, their resilience, self-reliance and independence, strategies for coping against all odds, learning authentically and independently, and of course, developing enhanced skill sets in technology? And this time you could check off as many as you want, but in your experience, which of these dimensions of their during or post-COVID experiences have been the most critical, most important, most impactful in your opinion? So I'm going to ask Liz again to please monitor how the polling is going. And when we are at a good number, we're going to close the polls and get you the results.
I love how everyone is jumping in to share their answers. We have about 60% of our participants today responding to this one. So I'd like to get a few more responses. And again, you can check off as many of these as you feel are appropriate. We'll do about 20 more seconds.
And I also appreciate all your answers in the chat box, how you're interacting with each other and connecting across the United States and beyond, sharing experiences and so forth. So keep them coming. All right, so let's see. According to the results, not surprising, many of you identified enhanced skill sets in technology as a silver lining, something positive, a critical during and post-COVID experience that we definitely have to hold on to. Both educators and our students have definitely developed brand new skill sets in infusing and integrated technology into our teaching and learning. And I'm also very happy to see that all of those major, very, very important life skills and dimensions of our identities, such as resilience, self-reliance, independence, strategies for coping, came out very high in this in this poll. And absolutely, learning authentically was also recognized by about 20% of you. So our students were often invited to apply what they were learning either in a hybrid or in an online setting to their own immediate environments and making those connections to their own lives. All right, so I am just so excited that we have so many educators here from India. I did not know that you would be here, but I still chose an Indian novelist, Arundhati Roy, and one of her most powerful quotes from an Atlantic essay. This is what she said. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our data banks, our dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. This quote just haunted me for a long, long time when I first heard about it. And then I looked up the entire essay and I read it very carefully. She certainly makes an extremely strong case for viewing and envisioning our past, present, and future as a portal. And this portal metaphor actually became so very powerful that this became an anchor metaphor for the book that I introduced to you earlier today. And this is one of the many beautiful illustrations that Claribel Gonzalez, who is here with us today, has contributed to this publication. So in this portal metaphor, I'm inviting you to think about, as we're entering, or maybe we're already halfway through this portal, what do we leave behind? Please share that in the chat. What is just too heavy, too disturbing, too unnecessary for us to take into a post-pandemic world? What do you want to leave behind? It's an absolutely beautiful illustration. Claribel is just a master sketch note artist. And the metaphor is certainly very, very powerful from Arundhati Roy. So what should we leave behind? So think about that notion of we've always done it this way. Absolutely. Working by yourself in isolation, that deficit mindset, subtractive bilingualism, standardized testing that is not giving us enough valuable, meaningful data or actionable data. So thank you so much. Keep them coming. Yeah, you could also think about in school or out of school, societal issues, maybe patriarchy we should leave behind, the lack of intention, teacher power and control, so many amazing ideas here. And definitely the earlier notions of the deficit thinking, the learning loss, assumptions, and we have to leave the past behind and look to the future, definitely. So the deficit thinking, the learning loss, the COVID slide, many of those ideas that would pull us down back into this portal, we have to leave those behind. Thank you. So now what's going to happen on the other side of the portal? So as you're finishing your ideas related to what to leave behind, I'm going to invite you to think about, what do we take with us? What should be on the other side of the pandemic? What should be on the other side of the portal? More focused outcomes, very good. Equity, innovation, enhanced technology, self-reflection, intentionality. Thank you, Allison, for that. Student choice and love, compassion, downtime. We definitely have to do more self-care. I agree with you. Resilience, growth. Oh my gosh, amazing, amazing answers. Liz, I just wanted to confirm with you that the recording is going to be done. Is the chat also going to be available to the viewers? Will they be able to read through the live participants' amazing participation and contributions?
I will see what we can do.
All right, wonderful. I'm just in awe of your amazing participation. I could see that the chat, I can save it. That feature is available to me. So when we are finished, I will definitely save the chat just even for my own benefit. to read through your ideas and your reflections. And again, thank you for this amazing participation here. Okay, so there are 4 equity strategies that Claribel beautifully captured here on this sketch note, and they are amplifying the talents, spirits, and personal powers of our multilingual learners, starting with the who, starting with the students. Recalibrating the curriculum to accelerate learning for them, that's the what. What are we teaching? How can we examine our taught curriculum, our intended curriculum, our hidden curriculum, and making sure that that leads to accelerated learning rather than remediation or irrelevance. Number 3 is teaching and assessing to build student autonomy, agency, and resilience, even though we know that the students have already developed so much of this during the COVID times. But that's the how. How can we ensure that our teaching is relevant, rigorous, research-informed, and meaningful for our students? And I could have started with number 4, that could have been number 1, because that's the overarching umbrella strategy, which is harnessing the power of connections and relationships. So I just gave you the entire portal metaphor translated into a post-pandemic educational world inspired by Arundhati Roy and so beautifully captured by Claribel Gonzalez. So I'm going to ask you another poll question here. And the question is related to these 4 strategies. And I'd like to celebrate what you're doing, because I know that intuitively, intentionally, you're already doing many of these equity strategies. So on the poll, just check off all of these that you have already been able to successfully implement. Which of these 4 strategies are already part of your practice? And don't be shy. I'm going to give you bragging rights. Please tell us, tell the world what you're already doing successfully. What drives your instruction in support of multilingual learners? I wouldn't be surprised if we were just thinking alike and you would be already practicing these strategies. And just check off the ones that you are successfully and consistently and intentionally implementing. All right, I know, Liz, you're monitoring. The feature is not available for me to monitor, but I have a fabulous co-presenter. So Liz, let me know when we're going to be ready to share the results.
All right, we are at 57% right now. I'd like to see it a little bit higher than that, so let's give it about 20 more seconds.
Sure, definitely. It's a lot to think about.
It is.
Yes, it's not an easy short list. My previous lists were a little bit more accessible. After all, I gave you actually the summary of the entire book that I co-authored with Maria, Audrey, and Carrie, and Claribel illustrated it throughout the chapters. And we were really focusing on these guiding questions of the who, the what, and the how, and that overarching understanding of what needs to be happening. So thank you so much, Liz, for sharing the results. And as you could see, 75% of you are focusing on harnessing the power of connections and relationships. Absolutely. That's why I said that that could have been number 1. Again, I anticipated that most of you will be using that as your go-to strategy, because we have to definitely strengthen the connections, the relationships that we're forming and forging with our students and their families. And the next one is still staying within that context of understanding, learning about our students, and recognizing their talents, their spirits, and personal powers, rather than the deficits, the deficiencies, or their losses. So thank you so much. So I'm going to now introduce these 4 strategies with a little bit of more explanation and some concrete examples what they could look like. So as you know, the first one is amplifying the talent, spirit, and personal power of our multilingual learners. We need to affirm every one of our students and recognize their unique assets and strengths, rather than what they are lacking, what they're missing, what is absent from their learning or from their background. And when we do that, they're going to feel valued, affirmed, seen, and heard in our class classrooms and beyond. And we need to show them that we appreciate them exactly for who they are and what they can do. And what does that look like? So I'm going to show you some images. I'm going to tell a story through pictures for you. WIDA is just coming out with the new standards and some very new ideas about creating student portraits, allowing our students to participate in creating a rich set of information about them, recognizing their interests, their skills, and maybe even taking a couple of quotes from them. Inviting our students to show us multimodal, multilingual self-portraits, showing us who they are, as you could see in that central image, that look is just haunting me forever from this middle schooler in North Carolina. The teacher generously shared this with me from Wake County Public Schools for another publication, just so powerfully inviting the student to share about himself in 2 languages and creating this self-portrait. Or I'm going to take you to Buffalo, New York, in the upper right corner, where students' multiple languages and prior knowledge is acknowledged and celebrated and valued. Now let's hop over to Illinois for a moment to Killdeer Country Meadows School Districts, where all the languages are celebrated and acknowledged and welcomed in this community. The second strategy is to examine our curriculum, to recalibrate it, to make sure that we're accelerating learning for multilingual learners. That acceleration does not mean that we're rushing them. Instead, we're going to have to critically examine and revise our curricula to make sure that our students' experiences, cultural perspectives, their funds of knowledge, their funds of identity are recognized and valued. And we make sure that our students have access to such curricula that's culturally, historically, and linguistically responsive to their lived experiences, and not just responsive, but sustaining, recognizing that the students' identities need to carry into their adulthood, and that's not something that they're going to give up because they started their English-speaking education. In an integrated curricula, we also make sure that we focus on our students' content and language, as well as social emotional development at the same time. No small feat. This is really serious equity work that needs to be implemented. So here are a couple of examples what it could look like. So first of all, I'm inviting all of you to consider or engage in, if you have already considered it, in curriculum equity audits to make sure that your students see themselves in the curriculum, see themselves in the picture book, see themselves in the high school science and social studies curriculum, and the rich cultural heritages and identities that our students and their families represent are also part of the curriculum. And a couple of other examples. I could go on and give you pages and pages of amazing examples that I have taken in various classrooms during my travels prior to the pandemic. You could see an integrated classroom in a 5th grade setting where the students are learning language and science about mixtures and solutions at the same time. I'm also sharing with you a Southeast Asia edition of Monopoly. We're inviting the students to show what they understand in a game-like, engaging format and allowing them to translate their own lived experiences into a learning tool. The third strategy focuses on teaching and assessing students in a way to build their autonomy, agency, and resilience. And when we do that, we're going to support our multilingual learners' independence. And we want to make sure that they're also taught and assessed fairly and equitably. They must experience an integrated curriculum and integrated instruction to be able to make ample and reasonable progress, both in the core content area and in language and literacy. And again, we can't forget about integrating and infusing social emotional learning and development into our teaching. Now, what does this look like? A couple of quick snapshots here for you. On the left-hand side from Mrs. Holtkamp and Ms. Boschneck on a Padlet, inviting the students to write what-if poems and inviting them to express their ideas and challenging them to the highest level of critical and creative thinking. And on the right-hand side, you could see student interaction. I absolutely love the triad format where 2 students are maybe talking, discussing, and the 3rd student might be listening in. But this kind of peer interaction allows your students who might not be fully fluent in English yet to be participating in learning. The line up and fold activity from Patrick Medford in a 5th grade classroom also shows you student-to-student interaction and independence, where students are taking charge of their own learning, they're supporting each other. These peer support pictures from Idaho and from Long Island classrooms that I visited show that English proficient and English learner students can work together, or bilingual peer bridges can work together on a fair and equitable assessment strategy, where a new arrival is pointing to a particular picture while the other student is capturing the answer on an exit slip. So making sure that the students have shared ownership of their learning, they're supporting each other, and they're creating a vibrant learning community. Okay, and the final strategy is to harness the power of connections and relationships. We have to make sure that during and after these extremely difficult times, we create healthy and safe learning environments. You saw that I just took that deep breath here because it's just wearing us all down. The trauma and the stress and the pressure is I think, if you are like me, it's still sitting on my chest, and we're all struggling with coming out on the other side of this pandemic healthier and stronger. So we have to contribute to that process by creating classroom, school, and larger community environments where all constituencies work together. They develop trust and respect and understanding for each other. And our multilingual learners, after this long period of isolation, also have to develop and redevelop a strong sense of belonging to be able to thrive as independent, self-reliant members of our communities. And what does it look like? As I mentioned to you, of course, these are pictures before the pandemic. That's why the teachers and the students are not wearing masks. But just from these gestures, I think you could see the teachers' commitment, the leaning in, the conferencing time, the game-like activity on the left-hand side from a school in Brooklyn, and on the right-hand side, the dynamic interaction, the support for these students in a math classroom, the one-on-one personalized type of learning that's represented by Alex Corbett in the middle, in that middle school setting in Harlem, all capture these moments of high levels of commitment for our multilingual learners' success. And in the general education classroom, as well as engaging the families and the communities, are also represented in these pictures from Minnesota and from North Carolina. Every one of these pictures tell a beautiful story. We just don't have time for me to tell you every single detail about what's happening, but hopefully these pictures are worth 1,000 words, and you could see the dynamic, engaging and supportive learning environments that these educators have created. So I'm going to now ask you to go back on the poll. It was a lot, I shared a lot with you. Hopefully all of these strategies came alive through these examples, but now I'm going to ask you to consider on the next poll, which of these equity strategies will you be focusing on this year? Again, I made it a multiple choice with multiple answers rather than narrowing it down to one single goal that you would be setting for yourselves. But which of these 4 goals, 4 strategies do you feel you would really want to focus on a little bit more? So please pick 1 or 2, even though I'm sure that all 4 of them might be applicable and meaningful, and you might be working on all 4 of them, or even more than these 4. Right now, just for the sake of this poll, if I could please ask you to select 1 or 2, and Liz will be monitoring how far we're going with the participation.
So far, so good. I think everybody wants to go back in and select a couple to really focus on. We have 65% and rising. So let's give it a few more seconds here.
All right. And I see in the chat box, thank you so much, Liz, for sharing the handout. Absolutely. So I selected that 1-pager from the PowerPoint that gives you the entire summary chart of the 4 strategies, as well as offering some rationale for them. Oh my goodness, the results are in. And I could not be more delighted to see that every one of these strategies just appealed to all of you to some degree, and it's pretty even. I did not see that coming, but I'm very, very delighted. I have to take a quick screenshot of this, and I will definitely be tweeting out about this myself. So in fact, these 4 strategies could be year-long equity goals for an entire department. They could certainly be individual or teams of teachers who commit to these goals. But where do we start? So I came up with this idea. I co-developed this slide with Audrey Cohen, one of my co-authors and frequent co-presenters. Let's start with AAA. Let's start with something that's going to give us a safety net. And the AAA stands for Agency, Assets, and Accelerate. So let's view our multilingual learners as capable students. That asset-based, strength-based approach is something that I'm inviting you to embrace. Students who want to meet and exceed the high expectations that we're going to hold for them. So we're going to be scaffolding up and having high expectations for all students. Let's also recognize that they are already competent in one language or maybe more than one language, and they have their cultural and funds of identity and knowledge available to them to acquire English. And finally, let's intentionally focus on their language acquisition levels of English and scaffold up, always look towards the next level. How can we accelerate and clear the pathway for them to develop language and literacy on the next level of proficiency level, while we're also significantly and consistently addressing academic and disciplinary literacy skills, such as writing in math, writing in social studies, writing in science, and writing in ELA will be 4 very different types of writing activities. So to accelerate learning for our students, we need to be specific and explicit about the type of expectations that we have for them. Another way that I could invite you to plan for next year is to engage in a self-reflection or self-assessment check activities, such as what this checklist is inviting you to do. So just take a moment again and reflect on which of these do you think you will really have to maybe pay attention a little bit more. So if I just numbered it off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you could just drop the number that's correlated to the question into the chat box. And when we self-reflect and self-assess, we think also about our strengths and assets first. Often when I work with educators, I find that we're often so hard on ourselves. So let's practice what we preach and also celebrate our own successes, our own strengths and assets, and then build on those strengths and assets. So I'm looking forward to seeing in the chat box which you are indicating as a possible goal. I'm seeing a lot of 3s. All right. Are the lesson materials and lesson tasks instructionally and linguistically scaffolded up rather than reduced and oversimplified? That is amazing. That's a very, very strong place to start. That's a critical assessment of your own work. Maybe some of your colleagues that work with you can do it together, because with the best of intention, sometimes we want to simplify and make our materials more accessible for our students, but unintentionally, we're creating an opportunity gap. So being mindful of how to scaffold up, how to always look at the grade level or even above grade level targets and creating the scaffolds and the necessary chunked steps for the students to get there is really important. And I'm getting a lot of 1s as well, and a lot of 5s, definitely, that critical thinkers, critical readers, writers, and how to think, listen, read, write, and speak critically and authentically is yet another very, very important goal for the new academic year. So thank you for that. Another way that I could invite you to consider just reflecting on where we are today. What were some of our past practices before the pandemic that really, really worked? We all have some of those favorite go-to strategies, some of those lessons that just never failed. So think about that. Again, giving you bragging rights, celebrating your success. Write down everything that worked in the past. And then think about your pandemic practices. During the fully online times that we were implementing for quite a few months, what were some of those successful lessons, strategies, and practices during the pandemic? that worked for you? Maybe because you want to maybe take some of those with you on the other side of the pandemic. What are your current practices as you have launched this new academic year already, wherever you are in the United States or internationally? We're already in very much the first or even the second months of our academic calendar. What is working for you really well right now? And finally, what would be some of your future goals based on all of these reflections? All right. So I am very happy to tell you that my publisher, Corwin Press, sent me a couple of copies of this new book. So Liz and I figured out a way to invite you to participate in a book raffle. So the steps that we came up are the following. If you are on Twitter, this is going to be really easy for you. If you're not yet on Twitter, you would have to get on Twitter. Tweet one key takeaway from today's session and tag both Saddleback and myself. And then you could also add equity for MLLs as the hashtag, but that's not necessary as long as you tweet it to us. If you're not active on Twitter, I'm sorry. It's now a Twitter anchored raffle. Maybe there will be another raffle that I'm going to be doing soon in another context, but right now it's on Twitter, and we hope that many of you can enter and will be participating. You could ask Manisha, a friend, maybe somebody else is on Twitter who could do it for you. All right, so we saved some time, about 10-12 minutes for questions. So I'm going to leave this on for a little bit longer, so that you're able to maybe screenshot it or jot down some details about this book raffle. And then I'm going to give it over to Liz to help me with some of the questions.
I'm sorry, I was so distracted by the chat over here. Sherry, tweet again. Go ahead. If you didn't get the right hashtag on there, just tweet again. No big deal. Tweet as much as you need to get it right. Okay. So we're going to leave this slide up for just another minute, so everybody has the information to enter the raffle. But we did have a couple of questions. The first one comes from Robert, who is definitely a loyal webinar attendee for Saddleback. And Robert, you can correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but I believe he teaches adults, but I'm not sure. He had a question about amplifying, building, and connecting with learners with differentiating instruction, specifically with, I think it says engineered texts, which, if I understand correctly, is grade level content at a supported or novice reading level. So is using that type of text a great way to amplify and build and connect for differentiation? And is there a resource that you can point to kind of give some more information about either using those texts or amplifying and building and connecting? A long question, I'm sorry, but that's the question.
Okay. I saw the question, but if Robert, if you just allow me to just revisit this notion of Twitter or not Twitter, to tweet or not to tweet, that is the question. And one participant, I'm so grateful for you, Helga, for calling me out that, wait a minute, this is not a very equitable practice if I'm excluding some of the participants if they're not on Twitter. So please forgive me for making that mistake. We all live and learn. So I actually provided my email, ahonixfeld@gmail.com. So if you're not on Twitter, you could still enter the book raffle. If you could just do the same thing, which is email me one key takeaway. And Liz, if you wanted to enter a Saddleback email there so that you could hear about what the participants had to say, then by all means. And to be even more equitable, I'm going to make sure that there will be at least one raffle just from the emails and 2 raffles from the Twitter, so that it is even more thoughtful and equitable the way we are handling the raffle. Are we okay with that? Just a quick yes, because I did not want to disappoint anybody. Okay, thank you. Manisha gave me the okay, sigh of relief. Okay, very good. So all of you non-Twitter users, you are still in the raffle, and you are more than welcome to share and participate. So thank you very much. So Robert is referring to actually a particular strategy that I featured in another book. The engineered text comes from Ida Walke, who basically suggested that we can't compromise on rigor, and we have to offer our students a learning experience that are highly rigorous with high support. So this notion of that could be your guiding principle: high rigor, high support. So how do we do that? So the way we can do that, according to Ida Walke's approach, and something that I have also embraced in many of my publications, and it is definitely connected to creating an equitable learning environment in which we look at a particular target text, something that you would take out of a required reading, a chapter, or something that is on grade level, but you know that your English learners might not be able to tackle that successfully independently. So you're going to start chunking that text. You're going to start creating the original version with a parallel, sometimes annotated version of the same text, using maybe synonyms or native language support, and periodically adding a stop and process type of opportunity for the students to turn and talk, reflect on their own. So it is basically a modified version of an original highly rigorous text, but the modification here does not mean simplification. That's the main point here, that you're like an engineer. You are tweaking that text, but you're not making it oversimplified and overly simple for the students. So thank you so much for that question, Robert.
Great question. Thank you. And another question came in around strategies or tips for helping school leaders and administrators understand the importance of these equity strategies. A lot of times we have attendees who they come, they love the information, and by the end of it, they think, I know this, I feel empowered, but the people around me and above me also need to understand this. So how to best communicate that information and call to action?
I absolutely love this question, because it might be the case today, as it has been many times in my professional life, that I am preaching to the choir. Those who already know these strategies are here with me, and they're looking for affirmation. And those who would really need these strategies might not even know about this webinar, or might not have heard about it, or just might not find the time. So how do we bridge that? And I see Sherry immediately jumped right in to the chat box with a couple of good strategies, which is maybe initiate a book study, initiate a professional conversation. Your advocacy, whoever is here, you carved out an hour of your personal or professional time to learn about this and to embrace equity for multilingual learners. You're already in a position of knowledge and power, and you're going to be able to use that knowledge and personal power, your own personal power and spirit, to advocate on behalf of multilingual learners. That's very, very important. One other way to advocate is to tell the success stories. People remember stories. So when we talk about English learners, certainly multilingual learners, oftentimes we look at data. We look at patterns of how they did on certain standardized tests or end of unit tests and so forth. But also let's tell those personal stories of resilience and success about these students, and how much the type of supportive teaching and learning that you designed for your students, how much that made a difference. Because I think that's what's going to really stay with your administrators. And advocate, ask for opportunities to talk to the entire faculty about the needs as well as the successes of multilingual learners. So I see there are a couple of other comments. Sherry also said that leading a school-wide collaboration, making sure that it's not just one person's job. It can never be just one ELD specialist job to respond to the needs of this population. I hope that that gave you a couple of tips here. I also welcome any other answers in the chat box too, how we can make sure that we let our administrators know about this work.
And I love how people are sharing their ideas in the chat. So Sherry, you are on fire today with these ideas and these comments. Keep it up. I'm loving it. I love the interaction today. It's such a lot of energy with the group. All right, I want to, before I forget, I can't forget to do this. Let me go ahead and let everybody know who is coming up next week on our Saddleback webinar. You know that at right about this time, every webinar, we make sure that you know what's coming up. So next week we have Tina Bean joining us from Sidlets Education, and this is going to be a very short and sweet webinar on building language through bell ringers. So the focus here is short, simple activities to facilitate listening, speaking, reading, and writing, 10 minutes or less that you can do as a quick warm up in your class. So if you're looking for ideas on little activities that you can use to fill up your toolkit, this will be a great session for you. You can register on our website, or you can register when you receive the email prompting you to do so. This will be a nice, light, fun session, and we can all share our different ideas in the chat there as well. And then don't forget, Saddleback Digital is now available. If you'd like more information, feel free to email me, or you can check out our on-demand webinar, which is on our YouTube channel, where I go into all kinds of details about how it looks and how it works and all of that. So great resource to have if you prefer to have your Saddleback books on a tablet or accessible on a computer. This is the way you want to go. So check that out. Now, we already did questions and comments. I feel like we're just about ready to wrap up here. Let me check the chat one more time.
Somebody asked about the recording being available, and can they share with others when you have the recording available?
Yes. So an email will be going out either later today or tomorrow for the attendees, as well as for the people who registered but weren't able to attend live. And there will be a link to the recording, and you will be able to share it, as that recording will live on our YouTube channel. So you can share it with whoever needs to see it. And pretty much every webinar that we've done, you can find on our YouTube channel. So definitely subscribe and check out all the great sessions that we've had so far through our Saddleback webinar series. So thank you so much, everybody. This is a last call for comments or questions before we sign off for the day. I'll give you a minute to type. Got lots of thank yous. Yes, you'll definitely be able to share this with your coworkers. Thanks for coming, Carly. Good to see you. Thanks so much, everybody. Lots of positive feedback in the chat. So thank you so much, everybody. We hope to see you next week. Thank you to Dr. Honingsfeld for sharing this great information. I can't wait to see the emails and the tweets about your biggest takeaway from this session. Oh, let me see what we've got here. Okay. We have a question that just came in.
Okay.
So Laura says she's an administrator. She supports these strategies 100%. She's the biggest cheerleader with regard to equity and multilingual learners, and I expect all of her teachers to use them throughout the day. Okay. Great. Thank you, Laura. Do your best to educate administrators who are not on board. Absolutely. Advocacy and just speaking from experience and sharing. That's what we can do.
I actually absolutely love that. I often make the same recommendation that if you are an ELD teacher, an ESL, EAL teacher, and you're getting observed by your administrator, then just please explain a little bit more detail about your pedagogy. So that way you are in a very natural way, even though it could be a little nerve-wracking for you as an educator who is getting observed for what you're about to do in the classroom. But those pre and post observation conferences are amazing times for you to have one-on-one conversations with your administrators. They certainly will understand your excitement, your commitment, your passion and advocacy for this population, and they will learn a lot within a short period of time.
That's a great point. I didn't even think of that, but those conversations are golden opportunities for that. So thank you so much. And thanks to all of you for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Honingsfeld. Have a great rest of your day, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.